Hello everybody, welcome back to another Age of History 2 video. So, in the last video, I started a gameplay of playing as Lithuania through World War II. And in that episode, I conquered most of Eastern Europe. But, at the end of the video, I got a declaration of war from Yugoslavia, the USA, and the UK. Well, I didn't. I declared war on the UK. But, anyways, let's see how I get myself out of this sticky situation. Target was obviously Yugoslavia because they were the smallest and they actually had a border with me, so they were the only threat to my territorial integrity. I also used some of the leftover troops from the last time to conquer the UK's lands to get them busy for a while in Greece. Taking over Yugoslavia was rather easy, but it still took over 12,000 troops. I was concerned that the UK would pay off either Bulgaria or Albania to use their territory to invade me, so I just set up a bunch of troops on the border just in case. Whilst I was focusing on the European theater of the war, the USA invaded my Greenland territory, so I got a little nervous that they would island hop as Americans are known to do. I grabbed some troops from Iceland to force them out. After grabbing some troops from Copenhagen, I combined them with troops from Iceland. I invaded Greenland to take it back, but they had too many troops to do it, so I couldn't take it in one fell swoop. Me from dividing my attention between the UK and the USA, I made peace with the UK, grabbing as much of the Balkans as I could. I know, bad idea. Grabbing most of the troops from the Balkan front, I went back to the homeland and I grabbed more troops to get Greenland back. I grabbed all the territory in one fell swoop, and I thought about leaving it as it was, but I wanted a little revenge. I went into some of the territory the USA took from the UK and just took a bit to send a message and to get the peace negotiations going faster. After that war, I had to spend a little bit of time just getting my finances in check, but thankfully I didn't have to fight a war. Well, I spoke too soon, I didn't have any money to get troops up, so I had to get some from my army in the north, just to get this under control. Because I took too long to quell the rebels, they declared independence and turned into the wonderful and very, very stable country of, drumroll please, Yugoslavia. Due to the fact that I just fought hard for that territory, I decided that I could just vassalize the country, and this would prove to be a very good idea in the long run. During this, I got a declaration of war from the shell of what used to be Denmark, so I put them out of their misery. I had a rebellion in Greenland, and I assumed from what would now be Denmark, but it's not a huge thing, and I put it down pretty quickly. During this time, the Soviets had a similar issue with a country coming out of them, so I just decided that I'd make them a vassal just to, well, one, get back at the Soviets, and two, just to have more vassals in the area. Yugoslavia declared war on the UK, and I decided to join in on the fun, so I also declared war on them. Yugoslavia did very well and pushed the UK all the way up to the border with the Soviet Union, meaning I didn't have to commit any troops to that. After gathering almost 60,000 troops from what would now be Romania, I moved to the Turkish Strait and moved into mainland Turkey. After taking most of the UK's territory in Turkey, I got a bunch of land stolen from me by the French, and this would be a running pattern. Also, Luxembourg is still alive, which I just find very dumb because they're very small. I got sick of losing troops and provinces from France, so I declared war on them so I could just take the territory for myself. After a ton of back and forth fighting, I just went to the table and grabbed as much as I could, so that will be fine for a bit. I gave Greece the guarantee that if they were invaded or got a war declared on them, that I would give them a proclamation of independence. So it's basically doing what the UK did to Belgium in the First World War, meaning that if somebody attacked them, I would join in to make sure they stay independent. For a bit of context, I want to say that the Soviets have been declaring war on many of the countries around them. I was getting concerned that they would do the same thing to me, so I started building both castles and watchtowers on the border in the most locations that I could to make sure that I had a defensive position to fall back on to give myself a fighting chance if they were to attack. Also, this soundtrack really goes hard, and I can't explain how much this helps me want to finish my World War I script, but I'm not going to do it. Yugoslavia asked me to fight against both Fars and Bhutan, so I decided that I would just have some fun. After gathering up some troops and getting my populace really psyched for the war, they went to the negotiating table and I was just kind of had to tell my troops that we weren't doing anything fun that day. They were very disappointed and sad. Nothing to chat for those soldiers. I wanted to see if I could just bully countries into giving me territories. It worked, but I decided that I wasn't going to abuse this mechanic since I really want this to be a challenge and not just me breaking the game with its own mechanics. Okay, I did conquer Turkey like this, but it was only 2 provinces, so I'm not really that, upset about it. But I'm not going to do this type of strategy again with the bullying just smaller countries and given stuff, so last time. I had a random rebel uprising in the Middle East, which used to be Turkey, but since I had all my troops in the area, and they picked perhaps the worst spot to do it, their little uprising was crushed, so forgotten and out of the way. So, you remember how I told Greece that I would protect them from any threats? So I kind of noticed they were fighting 3 countries. France, Germany, and Italy. France was the Lord Protector over Germany and Italy both, so if that doesn't make your day, I don't know what will. So I decided I'd hold up my end of the bargain and declared war on all 3 of them. My first big concern was France's territory in what would now be Syria, because it was its only land border with me. With all of Syria taken, I decided to make a move against Nazi Germany, so I asked for military access through the Soviet Union so I can move through them. During this, I noticed that there were not 1, but 2 Germanys. I decided that I wanted to consolidate them so I could conquer both and unite them into one. The invasion of the Germanys was not a fair fight, and I completely steamrolled both of the countries. During this, I got a declaration of war from Switzerland, so I decided that I wasn't going to play nice with them, and Once the wars were over, I gave regular Germany the vassal status. During all of this, the great country that is Yugoslavia declared war on Austria, so I quickly negotiated peace with the French so I could focus on one front. I quickly traded all of the old Nazi Germany's territory to regular Germany so I didn't have to worry about that during the war with Austria. I used my then vassal state of Italy to launch off the war with Austria to catch them unaware, but I didn't have many troops left over in the Switzerland territories. The war was a quick one, but I don't really want to cover this one because we're about to get to the exciting stuff, so Austria is conquered. Another rebellion in the Middle East, but I was able to put this one down, so no harm, no foul, except, well, the soldiers and the civilians. But who cares, eh? Alright, some more context. The Soviets had been fighting the Chinese in a damn near stalemate for many years at this point, and I thought that I would start prepping to get a little bit of the action, so I moved and recruited some troops. The hard part about fighting the Soviets, other than the winter, is the fact that they own a ton of territories in Central and Western Europe, so I would have to take out all of those before even thinking about pushing east. The speed would be very important. With all of the preparations done, I took a deep breath, called out all of my vassals, and I declared war on the Soviet Union for the second time, prolonging the Second World War. The first step, like I said before, was to take out all of the Central and Western territories before pushing the Soviets east. The main thing here is I wanted to divide their attention so they can't form a defensive wall in the west, so then I could push east. The push towards the coast of the Atlantic was slow going, but not very costly, mainly due to the lack of funds on the Soviets' parts. I was kind of concerned about how Norway would fare because of their history, but at this point, they were holding up on their own, so I had much hope for them. Again, following up, Norway is doing really well. They took almost all of what would now be Sweden and parts of Finland, so they are doing really well, and I was really proud of them. At this point, the western part of the Soviet Union was mine, so the main thing I wanted to do now was focus on the Italian and French islands and move troops towards the east. One of my vassals started taking territory in the western part of East Soviet, what would now be like right outside of Moscow. So I started my offensive, and there was no stopping me at this point. I was on a steamroll. During the fighting in the north, the Soviets brought a whole army of about, I think, 5,000 to 10,000 troops, and I didn't have that much manpower in the north, so I had to move some men from the south and west. Also another rebellion in the Middle East, and I can't get any more troops to defend against any of them, so they're kind of doing what they want. The north at this point was practically mine, so the only thing that I had to worry about is in the east and the south. I took the troops from the west and moved them to the islands off the coast of Italy. I also got a declaration of war from Andorra and the Philippines, but the main thing I want to know is who paid them to do this? Like Andorra and the Philippines, who? The rebels that had been fighting in the Middle East finally declared their independence, and I just didn't care. I mean, the Middle East was always a slow-going adventure for me. Okay, originally I thought I'd taken like some kind of psychedelic, but no, Luxembourg did declare war on me. I kind of told Germany to take care of them, but we kind of just declared peace, left them alone. Also, at this point, there are rebels, and this will be an ongoing fight for the rest of the game. I finally got to the Italian peninsula and could finally fully focus on the east. At this point, it was mostly just cleanup and getting as much territory as I could. It was rather boring and just kind of tiring at the end of it. Remember what I said about the rebels? I got another one just from the center of Europe. The fighting in Afghanistan was very back and forth, and I grabbed some more troops from the north and the west, because the Soviets were mounting their final defense. I'm going to skip a lot of the boring stuff and skip to the negotiations. The main thing I was looking for was kicking the Soviets out of the Western and Southern Europe, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to take all of their territory. It's such a big country. I did this, but they still had a foothold in Scandinavia, but that's future me's problem. And with the Second World War over, I found myself as the sole winner of this great conflict that lasted almost 50 years. But what to do now with all that territory? Well, rebellions were sure to come, especially with all this territory and my war weariness being like 100%. So remember when I said that the Philippines wanted to fight me? Well, they invaded Copenhagen, which means that my theory is that they went up around the Arctic Ocean, or they had to go the long way around the Cape of Hope. I think Good Hope? South Africa. So it's a long way either way, so they went all the way. After getting some troops, I was able to push them back into sea. Also, even more rebels were starting to pop up, almost once every 2 turns at this point. More rebels, baby, just waiting for the entire thing. Just watch this clip of like 10 of them going. Also, just a little thing is that my war weariness at this point, at some point was 100, like I talked about earlier. But at this point, it was only 99.9%, which is fine. My people are just a bit angry and tired of war. So Norway declared war on the USA, but I think if I declare war on them, it would cause the Third World War to start it. So that's where we're going to leave it at. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I love doing Age of History 2 videos because it's a lot of fun, and it's not too... I've seen a lot of these, like, strategy games that can be really confusing for a lot of people to watch, especially for people like me who don't understand some of those. And this one is kind of a more simple one, still challenging and tough and fun, but I feel like it's more of a sip, you don't have to think about it so much. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.